you have an interest in horses and love learning more about horses, the horse industry, teaching, or even managing your own horse business, then you're in the right place. We would love you to join us on our mission, which is to improve the lives of horses around the world through the education of riders, handlers, and trainers. So get comfortable, listen in, and enjoy.
This is another of our popular Listener's Choice interviews, which we're playing over the weekend. We've chosen the most popular interviews for you to select the Listener's Choice winner. If you're not sure how the Listener's Choice competition works, have a look at horsechats.com/choice for the rules and the leaderboard. Horse welfare and safety are of utmost importance where humans have any interaction with horses. Within the courses at International Horse College, we only utilise methods that promote safe and humane ways of interaction between horses and humans. We only support safe methods of educating riders, handlers and trainers about horse welfare. internationalhorsecollege.com, registered training organisation 31352. Today's guest is Aaron Scobie. Now, Aaron started showing youth quarter horses, competed in the Youth World Cup 3 times, and now he's got a training facility set up in Victoria that we're going to talk about. He does reining, cow horse, and cutting. Now, Aaron believes in taking time to establish the fundamentals to set up a horse for a long and sustainable career. And although success in the show pen is great, and he's certainly had some of that, Aaron considers recognition amongst his peers to be his biggest driver. To be recognised as a horseman, someone who puts the horse first and does him justice, that's what's important. How are you today, Aaron?
Oh, good, thanks, Glenys. How are you?
Good, good. So, Aaron, how's the weather down there? Is it dry? Is it wet?
It's not too dry where we are. We're kind of lucky we get a little bit more rain than a lot of people do, but it's certainly going to be a long summer.
Yeah. I've heard there's a bit of heat around.
Yeah.
Aaron, just so people can get to know you, have you got a favourite quote, something that you might use when you're teaching, when you're training, or just a quote you like to live your life by?
Yeah, I actually have quite a few. I tend to collect quotes over my life, but a couple that probably kind of come to mind, around horses and that I kind of think of a fair bit is a really good quote from Matlock Rose, who's was one of the old sort of cutting trainers in the States, one of the legends. And he used to say, horse shows are designed to show how much work you've done at home. And I think that's a key thing to think about with what we're trying to do is you see a lot of times people get to shows and try and, improve things, but, if it's not done by then, you're kind of a bit late.
Yes.
So that's, definitely one that I kind of keep in the back of my mind.
Yeah. And the shows are fun and the training's a bit of a hard slog, but if you're not putting in the hard slog, you're not going to have the fun and the enjoyment and do as well as what you possibly could.
That's right, though. Horse shows are a lot more fun when you're winning, and that tends to be from all that hard slog. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Now, you've started off with cattle, didn't you, with your youth and quarter horses? You started off, you're from New Zealand. Just tell us a little bit about how you got started with horses.
Yeah. So I suppose grew up in country New Zealand, and my best friend, when we were going through primary school and all that, his family had a sheep and beef farm, and they had used horses to work the farm for a long time, and they're sort of starting to get a bit more technologically advanced with motorbikes and bits and pieces, but still had horses there. And so we used to go out there and play around with them a bit. I guess I would have been 9 or 10 then, and one day coming home from their place and saying to Mum, do you think I could ever get a horse? And she kind of looked at me and said, yep, let's get 2. She had always liked horses and mucked around with them a bit as a kid. So that was kind of the start of that.
Wow. That was pretty lucky.
Yeah, it was very lucky. I mean, life could have been very different otherwise, but that's all right. And then from there, I was lucky enough to get involved. There was a local riding club that we used to go down to, and one of the ladies that was doing the instructing there, she was a very good horsewoman and was showing quarter horses and that sort of thing. I guess, it's all sort of the way things work out, but she'd actually, used to do eventing and the English side of stuff, and, showed with some of the really top trainers over in New Zealand. And she ended up being in a car accident and damaged her hand. So she started showing the quarter horses because she could show them one-handed.
Ah, okay. Yep.
And, so I got into the quarter horse scene sort of through that.
Mm-hmm.
It started out with just a little, he wasn't a quarter horse. He was a little old schoolmaster that had been through the pony club deal, and, sort of taught him to do the Western stuff.
Can you think of a time, and particularly probably with your little old schoolmaster, where you learned a lesson? You either learned what to do or what not to do. Sometimes these ponies can be characters and they sort of can teach you very easily. Can you think of a time that he's taught you something?
Well, I think, with him it was always about being really clear about what I wanted. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
he was pretty well trained, had a really good foundation, and had actually taught quite a few kids how to ride. So, if I could get things right, then he was kind of go along and do it pretty well for me. And so it was really important, at that stage for me to really understand what I was asking for. And that's kind of, carried on all the way through to my training now is I think you really need to have that clarity.
Clear foundations. So from him and then going professional, from when you first wanted to get a horse, was it just a gradual progression as you went through and did some competitions and competed and got better and better? Was it that you were always going to work with horses, or was there a decision that you made?
It's probably not a decision that I've even made now. So I've had periods of time where I've trained, and that's been my job. And there's been lots of periods where I've done other work as well, but I guess looking back then, it was always definitely an option. So I obviously stepped on to different horses through my youth years and that sort of thing, and I was pretty sure I was going to be a horse trainer at the end of that, and then you kind of start looking at what else is out there, and but it certainly spent quite a few years just training horses, and now I think I've got a pretty good balance to where we're not training full time. So I work as well, but we certainly still have a lot of fun with the horses and have the opportunity to ride some good ones if they come up.
Okay, good. So to be a good horse person, it's more important than winning in the show pen or the ring, whatever. To be a good horseman, if you've got any kids yourself or any young kids that you see, what skills, what character traits are you looking at to get that sort of person that is going to be a good horse person?
Yeah, definitely. It's something that I actually do think about a bit at the moment. I've got two young daughters who aren't really up to riding yet, but I'm sure they will be. But to me, to be a good horse person, first thing is you put the horse first, regardless of what else is going on. And part of that is being able to take the emotion out of things. So when you are training, you're not reacting or acting off emotion. It's purely, what's happening at the time and responding appropriately to it. But aside from that, and the biggest thing I think around being a good horseman or horse person is all the other stuff that happens away from actually riding the horse. So, looking after them right, making sure they're fed, making sure you look after their legs and all that sort of stuff. Some of the guys that I learnt from always used to say, like, if you go into a football changing rooms after a game and no one's just sitting around there doing nothing, they're all jumping in the ice baths and stretching or doing whatever else, and we really should be doing the same with our horses, given what we expect them to do.
Yep. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So you've had, a few trainers that you've worked with, but well, I suppose in the States and New Zealand and possibly in Australia. Yep. Who do you think's been the most influential?
Probably, pretty lucky. When I was showing it in New Zealand, we were, it's still pretty common to show in everything. So, we'd, through the youth years, we'd sort of show in everything from the cow horse all the way through the holder and English events and that sort of stuff. And,
yep.
That was a pretty good way to learn about horses and had some, pretty good guys, men and women sort of show me how to do that sort of stuff. So Jo Dyer, the lady I spoke about earlier.
Yes.
And another guy, Dave Young, who was the coach for most of those Youth World Cups. And Barry Ladd was the manager, and both of those guys have been big influences as well. But then, from a training point of view, I've always really looked up to, some of the guys in the States that are super consistent across a real wide range of events. Guys like Bob Abler and Todd Bergen, who, year after year will make the finals of the big events, and they might show in the reining futurity and the cow horse futurity, and Todd started showing the cutting as well, and but they're always competitive, across that wide range of events, and I think that's a pretty cool thing. And over, in Australia, obviously, Ian Francis has sort of done the same thing. For me, that's a pretty good mark to be able to show consistently across a bunch of different events. It's, specialising, it certainly has its challenges, but to be able to do it in a number of events and do it consistently is pretty cool.
Mm-hmm. Yep. But I think from underpinning that, you're looking at them not just as competitors, but as good horse people too.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, that's part of it. You look at events, like the Snafflebit Futurity in the States, the cow horse futurity, when they show, the world's greatest horsemen, when they show in 3 or 4 events. You've got to look after those horses pretty well.
Yep.
To get them through all that sort of stuff. And, it's a big thing.
Yep. Now, your first pony was influential. What about, have you got another one that you'd say this horse has really influenced my, I suppose, philosophy with horses, or, one that's a bit of a standout?
Yeah, well, I've probably got a few of those as well. The one that definitely comes to mind, I'll probably talk about 2, but one that comes to mind was a little gelding I had in New Zealand, and he was, when I came back from the States, he was the first 2-year-old I brought and started and sort of trained all the way through myself. And he was probably showed me that I could get one trained how I wanted to, which was, kind of cool after coming back from the States and riding a bunch of good horses there and being able to put my own handle on one and have him coming out pretty nice. So, yeah, he was a pretty cool little horse. He actually won the reining futurity over in New Zealand, and then he got cancer through his vertebrae, and we had to put him down after that, which is
a shame.
Sad.
For sure. Yeah.
But then, probably him, and then another little mare that I trained over here and showed at the the cutting futurity. Mm-hmm. And I was reserve in the limited open on her, and same sort of deal. She showed me that I could actually get one trained and compete with everyone else.
Yep.
So that's sort of, I think, for everyone that's working towards being a trainer, you've got to get one of those horses that give you the confidence.
Yes. Yeah.
And so you start believing in yourself a little bit after that.
Do you like working with your own horses? What makes you happiest, working with your own horses, working with a problem horse that's come in that, you've been able to connect with? What's the best feeling for you?
I'll probably, love taking 2-year-olds and taking them all the way through.
Okay.
More than anything. I don't mind working with, problem horses as such if I think they've got some potential. Mm-hmm. But, I kind of think there are a lot of nice horses out there as well. So, sometimes you kind of are best to sort of pull the pin, depending on what your goals are. But yeah, so for me, whether it's ours or someone else's, but working with the young horses and taking them all the way through, seeing what they're capable of.
Yep.
Probably what interests me the most.
Just thinking about those problem horses, have you got like a case study or something, a problem horse that you might have started with, and what technique did you use, or how far did they go, or how did you fix that particular horse's problem? What was it doing before you got it, and what were you able to do when you were working with the horse?
Yeah. It sort of depends on what the horse is. I can't probably think of a specific one because they all come and have certain issues, and the approach is always kind of the same. It's just to figure out, take them back to the basics and figure out where the holes are in their training.
Okay.
Because, that's where the problems sort of come from. I think can tend to overcomplicate things a little bit. And a lot of times, those problems are coming up because the horses are, what we call in conflict or aren't really sure what we're asking for. So if you, just back things up a little bit and start thinking about, okay, I kind of always keep in my mind, we've really only got to get these horses to stop, go and turn.
Okay.
Take it back to that level.
Okay. Yes, because you talked about, about the importance that you place on your fundamentals.
Yeah.
So, yeah. What about people? What do you think that people in general, you might just choose, what can they do to stop the horses being a problem? What can they, and I'm thinking for the listeners, what's a training tip for them to improve their riding or handling skills so that there's less problem horses around?
Yep. It's probably pretty similar. But a lot of times it's just around slowing down and giving horses time to respond, and then just focusing on those basics again. The classic one I always see is when people are trying to get horses to back up and they've got their legs on them. You kind of go, okay, well, how do you ask your horse to go forward? And so I put my legs on it. You think that might be a little bit confusing. In terms of we're using basically the same cue to ask that horse to do two things that are, in opposition. And they're always going to get a little bit confused there. So, if you are going to do something like that, you need to be really clear about, where you put your legs and make sure that you're consistent about doing exactly the same every time. And that's probably one of the big things that'll help people out. And the other big thing I think is a lot of times just getting out of their faces. If we're having to ride them around sort of hanging on their face to try and control their speed, it's pretty hard to teach them anything else from there.
Okay. And what about legs, canter aids? Is there any confusion, canter aids, when horses strike off on the wrong lead because people are just saying canter rather than canter left, canter right?
Yeah. Well, that sort of can come back to a couple of things, but, you quite often, and I guess it comes back to trying to get out of their faces a little bit. I always, liken it to driving your car around with your handbrake on. And if you do that, eventually when you do want your brakes, they're kind of halfway worn out. And it can be a bit the same with horses. But then as far as picking up correct leads and that sort of thing, it's really about just getting a bit of body control on them so they know that when you slide your leg back, they shift their hip over a little bit. Then you're able to, pick the shoulder up a little bit with your inside hand and then shape them up in a way that it's easy for them to pick up that correct lead.
Okay. Yeah.
And then it comes back to what I was saying before about giving them time to respond as well. Not just with our leads, but it's really easy to, if we, were to slide that leg back to ask for a lead and expect it to happen, right now and put that amount of pressure on them, you're going to get a horse that wants to run into its lead because it kind of gets a bit worried about what's happening next. Whereas if you, slide that leg back and just give it, you're not going to wait until they go halfway around the arena, but, give it 4 or 5 strides to just try something and understand what you're asking and keep it all relaxed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you're an equestrian coach or a horse riding instructor, or even if you aspire to be one, have a look at the free video series for horse riding instructors on the Horse Chats website. Go there now, have a look, horsechats.com. Is there any other thing that you deal with on a regular basis that you say, we've sort of talked about the rein back and the canter and, not hanging on to them all the time. Anything else that you think is going to be useful for our listeners? Just, if they're about to go out and ride, what's some things that they could just a handful of things that they could just go, right, I'm doing this or I'm not doing it. What's another one?
Yeah. Well, it really depends, a little bit around where they want to go with their horses, but that's probably, one of the key things is having a really clear idea of what you actually want to get done.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And if the idea is, okay, today I just want to go out and have a nice ride, out on the trail, well, then that's cool, and that's what you go and try and achieve. But, I always kind of say don't change your mind around what you're trying to achieve halfway through a manoeuvre, and so, again, quite often, the turnaround or spin, the reining's a good example. You'll quite often see people go out and, they'll start their spin when they're training, and halfway through it, they'll go, oh, this is going really well, I'm going to ask for more speed, and, starting to step things up a bit, and then the horse gets a bit worried, and, because he doesn't quite know what to expect anymore.
Yeah.
As I always say, like, if everything's going well like that and you want to, step things up, just stop and really think about what you're trying to achieve, and think about what you're going to be happy with.
Yes.
And that's probably the key for all training, and that's why it can be really, really beneficial to actually get on a horse that knows how to do something.
Yeah.
Get the feel of what you're happy with, because if you're trying to train them to, it doesn't matter what it is, you're trying to train them to be light, and you don't have a really good idea in your head around what light is, it's pretty hard to do that consistently. Where
are you headed? What's going on in the next 12 months, or, what are your plans for the future?
Next week we're heading down to Equitana.
Yep.
And we'll be down there for Thursday, Friday, Saturday. So I'm doing a couple of presentations down there around the ranch horse events.
Mm-hmm.
So they're obviously getting more and more popular. So we'll go and talk about them a little bit. And then I'm showing in the Ranch Horse Invitational and the Rein Cow Horse Masters classes down there as well. So that's next week. And then after that, next 12 months, I suppose, we're looking at probably towards this time next year, we'll start getting back into futurity horses a little bit.
Yes.
Our focus for the next little while is really around just getting our place set up, kind of taking the next step there and getting a few more things set up on our place that we'd like.
Yep.
And then, sort of looking at back into starting some 2-year-olds and that sort of thing around this time next year.
Good. Now, you've talked quite a lot about being clear to the horse, clear with your aids, clear with when you're teaching the fundamentals and going back to the fundamentals. If there is a problem, always going back to the fundamentals. If you're going to sum up your whole philosophy with horses, with training, before you go, just something as a takeaway for our listeners, what would you say just in a couple of sentences?
It probably comes down to, what we've talked about. It's have a really clear idea of what you want. And, it doesn't matter what it is that you want, but just know what it is. Because we're all, regardless of, if you're a reiner or a dressage rider or a show jumper or a cutter or whatever, we all want different things, but have a really clear idea of what that actually is. And then, don't overcomplicate it. Just start with that stop, go and turn, and then getting some body control on them. And you find that if you get that, and we find it because these ranch horses, we've got to show them in a bunch of different events. If they've got good basics and can travel consistently, it's pretty easy to teach them all the fancy stuff. And that's the same across all the disciplines.
Mm-hmm.
So start with the basics, get good basics, and you'll find it's easy to add all the other bits and pieces to them once you've got that.
Yep.
Then probably in a couple of words, I used a few more than that then, but in a couple of words is just have a clear idea of what you want and take the time that it takes to get it.
Yep. No, I think that's good. I think good advice, and good advice, as you said, for any discipline. Just those fundamentals or the basics, or, some people might call them different things, but basically it's a basic training of a young horse.
Yep.
Yeah, so Aaron, if people would like to contact you because you're setting up your training facility now, you're, looking for horses to take on as well, how can they contact you?
Probably the easiest way is just on Facebook.
Yep.
So we've got a Facebook page on there, A&K Scobie Performance Horses. And that's probably the easiest way to get in touch to start with, and you can obviously see what we're up to at the time as well.
Okay. Yep. Yeah. And we'll have those details on your page, which will be horsechats.com/Aaron Scobie, or just go to horsechats.com, search for Aaron or search for Scobie, and you'll find those contact details at the bottom of the page. We'll get them all off you and make sure we've got the research there. Aaron, thank you. Thank you for talking to us today. Hopefully we'll catch up with you at Equitana, and good luck down there as well. And hopefully we'll catch up with you again sometime soon.
Yeah, sounds great. Thanks a lot, Glenys.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.
If you've enjoyed this chat, then please comment, rate and subscribe. If you'd like any changes or recommendations for guests, then please contact us through horsechats.com. And while you're online, have a look at the government-accredited courses at internationalhorsecollege.com. Registered Training Organisation 31352.
Remember that our comments and instructions are general in nature and do not take into consideration your individual horses or your individual ability and circumstances. If you enjoyed this podcast, then please leave your comment below.